In April of 1989, a 28-year-old investment banker from Manhattan named Trisha Mealy left her Upper West Side apartment for a night out on the town. She met up with friends for dinner near Columbus Circle, then took the subway downtown to the trendy dance club Liquid. After dancing the night away, feeling the beat of the music and the warmth of the crowd, she decided to take a shortcut home through Central Park. Despite the late hour, the park was still bustling with activity. It was the height of spring in New York City, and the evenings were warm and inviting. People strolled along the paths, couples lingered on the bridges, and musicians played under the trees. And so it was here in this place of beauty and life that a nightmare unfolded. As Trish made her way through the park, she was unaware that someone was watching her. A young man with dreams of becoming a boxer had come to the park that night with a purpose: to attack and rape. He followed Trish for some time, waiting for the right moment. When he finally struck, it was with the force of a knockout punch. The next thing Trish remembered was waking up in a hospital bed, disoriented and in excruciating pain. Her body was battered and bruised, and she had no idea what had happened to her. As she slowly regained consciousness, she learned that she had been found lying on a hill in Central Park by a dog walker who had called 911. The news of the brutal attack spread like wildfire through the city. People were shocked and horrified that such violence could occur in the heart of New York. Fear and anger gripped the city, and everyone wanted answers. Enter 5 teenage boys, 5 ordinary teenagers who just so happened to be African American. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. On the night of April 19, 1989, they had just finished playing basketball at the nearby 96th Street playground and were heading home when they entered Central Park. What they didn't know was that they would soon become the focus of a manhunt. As the sun set over Central Park, casting long shadows on the pavement, these 5 boys became entangled in a web of suspicion and accusation. The police, driven by public pressure to make an arrest, honed in on them as potential suspects. Without any substantial evidence, they began a relentless pursuit, questioning the boys for hours on end, wearing them down until they cracked. They questioned Antron McCrae, Kevin Richardson, Yusuf Salam, Kari Wise, and Corey Wise. 4 of them were 14 years old, and the oldest, Antron, was only 16. Without their parents or lawyers present, they sat in those stark, unforgiving rooms for hours upon hours. The questions came fast and furious, relentless and accusatory. The officers told them that the girl had identified them and that if they just told the truth, they could all go home. But the boys, scared and confused, maintained their innocence. They hadn't done anything wrong, yet the walls of the interrogation room seemed to be closing in. Exhaustion began to take its toll. Hours passed and the boys started to crack. They began to make confessions, but they weren't true. They were desperate attempts to end the questioning, to go home. These false confessions would later become the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. The boys, now with criminal records, were paraded before the media. Their faces, distorted by the flashing bulbs, dominated the front pages of the newspapers. Headlines screamed their supposed guilt, and the public ate it up. The teenagers became known as the Central Park 5. But as time went on, doubts began to creep into people's minds. As the legal proceedings commenced, the full weight of the justice system came down on these 5 young men. They were tried as adults, and the evidence against them was, to put it bluntly, flimsy. Eyewitnesses were shaky. The physical evidence didn't fit. And DNA testing, which was still in its infancy at the time, failed to link them to the crime. Yet despite the lack of concrete proof, the public was convinced of their guilt. Fueled by media frenzy and public pressure, the prosecutors pushed forward. The teenagers, overwhelmed and scared, had confessed, after all, and their confessions were the star witness in the prosecution's case. So in the face of such compelling, albeit coerced confessions, the jury saw little need to doubt the prosecution's narrative. The judge, the lawyers, and even the jury believed the confessions. They believed the 5 boys were guilty. They saw them as monsters. So in the end, the Central Park 5 were found guilty and sentenced to prison. Antoine McCrae, the eldest at 16, received the most severe sentence of 13 years. Kevin Richardson and Yusef Salam were sentenced to 7 years each. Corey Wise and Carrie Wise, both 15 years old, were given 6 and 12-year sentences respectively. Young men, they were sent to adult prisons where they had to navigate a world of hardened criminals. They lost their childhood to prison walls, cold steel bars, and the haunting echoes of other inmates. Inside, life was a daily struggle. The teenagers faced taunts and jeers from fellow inmates and guards who saw them as privileged delinquents. They missed their families, their friends, their schools. All they had was each other and their shared innocence. Together, they faced the hard beds, the bland food, and the lonely hours. They wrote letters to their families, pouring out their hearts on paper, begging for understanding and support. They exercised to keep their bodies strong, read books to keep their minds sharp, and most importantly, they held on to their innocence. Despite the accusations hurled at them, they knew they had done nothing wrong. They were innocent. But as years passed, something remarkable happened. They never gave up hope. They never wavered in their innocence, and that innocence was their guiding light in the dark days ahead. One day, the truth emerged. In 2002, a man named Matias Reyes confessed to the attack on the jogger. The police ran his DNA and it matched the evidence from the scene. This confession and the DNA evidence exonerated the 5 boys, once and for all. Finally, after 13 years of fighting for their freedom, the 5 men walked out of prison as free men. They had proven their innocence. But what kind of men were they? What awaited them outside the prison walls? Outside, they were greeted by a hero's welcome. People who had once scorned them were now cheering their names. They had become symbols of hope, proof that the system could sometimes fail and that justice could prevail. They were interviewed, they spoke out, and they sued the city. They received a settlement of $41 million from the city of New York, but no amount of money could compensate for the stolen years, the lost opportunities, or the pain they endured. Now let's take a look at where the men are today. Antoine McCrae, Kevin Richardson, Yusef Salam, and Kareem Wise have stayed out of the public eye since their release. They rebuilt their lives, starting families, holding down jobs, and trying to leave their past behind. Corey Wise is the only one who has remained in the public sphere. He became an activist, advocating for criminal reform and speaking out against wrongful convictions. He continues to raise awareness about the dangers of coerced confessions and the fallibility of eyewitness testimony. No matter where they are, what they're doing, one thing remains constant: their brotherhood. They have a bond forged in the fires of adversity, a bond that no amount of time or scrutiny can break. They continue to support each other, offering strength and solace, knowing that they have been through something that few can comprehend. The story of the Central Park 5 is a sobering reminder of the dangers of unchecked media frenzy and public pressure. It shows how easily innocent people can be swept up in a maelstrom of accusation, and how difficult it is to escape once public opinion has turned. It is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, the capacity for forgiveness, and the unrelenting pursuit of justice. These 5 men lost their innocence on a spring night in Central Park, but they reclaimed it with their courage and determination. Their story will continue to resonate, urging us to be cautious about the stories we believe, the judgments we make, and the rights we uphold. Their journey is a beacon of hope, a reminder that no matter how dark things get, the light of truth and justice will eventually shine through. And in the end, their ordeal compels us to be better, to strive for fairness, to value the truth, and to protect the innocent. Their story is not just a tale of wrongful conviction, but a ballad of resilience, a hymn of hope, and ultimately an ode to the indomitable human spirit.